Well, there we go. Good evening and welcome, folks. I'm Meredith Willa Dodson from Decreasing the Distance. We're a growing collective that advocates for equitable education solutions on behalf of SFUSD parents and caregivers. One of the things that we're finding we love to do is share information, creative ideas, especially ideas by parents for parents. Some of the most creative solutions that we've seen this year in response to the pandemic and the challenges that it's created for our families have been ground up, parent-driven, individual, school-driven solutions by you all. So thank you for being here tonight for this conversation, to hear from some parents who have been working on their own creative solutions, specifically around outdoor learning opportunities for children. We are recording, as you may have just heard, so that we can post to our social media later for those who could not join tonight. We've got mostly parents in the audience and also a few teachers, principals, and CBO partners. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. During this hour, we will hear from some parents at Jefferson Elementary, as well as the parent of an Everett middle schooler. The mom, she's one of our DTD parent leaders and has been collaborating with other moms in the mission to design a program to complement and scaffold their children's morning distance learning. So more quick housekeeping, there will be a Q&A toward later in the hour. I'm not sure if it will be through chat or there's actually a Q&A feature that you can use. So you can ask your questions there. Also, we've collected questions from the registration form. So if you submitted questions there, we will try to get to them. There were some great questions that came in and we're looking forward to being able to get to those tonight. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Jessa and Supriya from Jefferson Elementary School to talk to us about what they've been up to. Thank you, Jessa and Supriya.
Hi, everyone. Nice to share some virtual space tonight. I'll introduce myself first, and then Supriya, why don't you hop on and introduce yourself too. My name is Jessa Barzelay. I'm a parent at Jefferson Elementary School. I have a kindergartner and a fourth grader. And I have a second hat I'm wearing tonight, and I'm the Director of Learning and Engagement at San Francisco Botanical Garden, where I've been running summer camp and after school programs all outdoors during the pandemic and have served over 200 kids so far since July. So I come as a fierce advocate and a committed outdoor education person, but also as a parent who is interested in solutions that will work for all kids and will work for teachers too. And I'll kick it over to Supriya to introduce herself.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Supriya Ray. I'm a parent as well of a second grader at Jefferson and also of a sixth grader at AP Giannini. So I have schools at 2 levels of the SFUSD school system. And I appreciate the opportunity that you're giving us to talk about outdoor learning in our schools. I think Jessa is going to go ahead and begin with an introduction, and then I'll come back on.
Yeah, thank you. And yes, thank you, Decreasing the Distance, and Meredith and Tina for helping tonight. Thank you so much, and really happy to be sharing this space with Dea as well. I wanted to share a little bit about the background of what this group at Jefferson has been doing. We are a group of, a core group anyway, of about 5 to 10 dedicated parents. We are supported and informed by a couple of teachers who are very interested in teaching outside and have dedicated and volunteered their time to help with forming some plans. And we are all working parents. We are a diverse group. We are representing the nonprofit field. We have school district employees. We have representatives of public agencies, healthcare field, law, and more. And where we have kind of committed ourselves from the very beginning is in thinking about this as not just a Jefferson solution, but thinking about equity throughout and not just the Jefferson site. Although we have started to form plans for Jefferson, it has been a hope that the plans that we form are scalable to other schools and other school communities. And we'll share more about that later. We also are really committed to data and science and safe return to school for teachers and students. We started meeting in June after many of us had the kind of shocking awakening to what distance learning looked like and could see the writing on the wall that it was going to continue for some time. And we really started to ask, well, why not outdoors? And since then, we've had weekly meetings. We've met with local legislators. We've sought input from SFUSD staff. We've engaged in Board of Education meetings, written countless advocacy emails, and spent a lot of time just building awareness within our own school community. Also earlier in our formation, we launched a petition, SFUSD, encouraging SFUSD to consider their use of outdoors for school time learning. And that petition yielded over 2,500 responses. And we are on the verge currently of completing our draft plan for the use of Jefferson School outdoor learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about what we mean by what we have come to talk about as school outside versus outdoor education. And lastly, I just want a little disclaimer and a little bit of humility that we are not experts in this. We've been thinking about it for a while. We do not have all the answers. We do not even have all the answers for our own school. We are constantly working on trying to make sure that we have all the data that we need in order to make informed decisions. But like you, we are just trying to show up as our best selves. And with that, we welcome your questions. We are committed to transparency as sharing everything that we know and including the roadblocks and stumbling blocks that we've hit along the way. So thank you very much. And I will pass it off to Supriya to talk about what raising awareness has looked like in our situation. And go ahead and take it away, Supriya.
Sure, thank you, Jessa, I appreciate it. I'm gonna start talking at a general level and then talk more specifically about what we did at Jefferson to raise awareness there. So let's start with what we actually mean by outdoor learning. Many people, in fact, probably most people, don't actually know what that means. If you think, for instance, about the word school, what do you envision? If you're like most people, you probably see buildings, classrooms, hallways, desks, pretty much everything indoors, even the gym. Now, when you think about the word outdoor learning, what do you think about? Again, we may all be bringing up different images in our minds, but a lot of people think about outdoor education programs of some kind that may involve gardening, for instance, like the botanical garden, or may involve nature education, or may involve walks and hikes. In any event, you're probably thinking about something that's outdoors, but you're probably not thinking about school. So all these things are great. All these outdoor education programs are wonderful, but that's not what we mean when we talk about school outside. We mean something else. We actually mean holding school outside. More than just a particular class. We mean any class. We mean any program, any part of the school day. So for instance, you can have math outside and social studies and science and language arts. You can have music, drama, art itself. You can have lunch outside. Every part of the school day can be there, not just recess and PE, which might be the things that many people would think about as being obvious candidates for outside. You can pretty much do anything outside that you could do inside. It does have to be done in a somewhat different way with somewhat different tools, but you can do those things. So a lot of what thinking about school outside means is shifting your perspective, shifting your mindset, because so many of us are conditioned by our own experiences to think of school as being indoors only. So we need to shift and help people shift what they think school looks like and how school can be done. So fundamentally, it's really helpful to bring an open mind to this. Please bring your creativity to all of this, and a lot of good old-fashioned planning, much of which will be low-tech. So this is not rocket science. It can be done. It's not even new, frankly, because outdoor education, that is school outside or outdoor learning, as we prefer to, using those terms instead of outdoor education, can be and has been held outside for millennia. It's been done worldwide. It's been done in formal and informal settings. Notably, it's a proven model. There are decades already of research on the benefits of doing school outside and outdoor learning programs. It shows educational benefits, social emotional benefits, mental benefits, physical benefits. And notably, outdoor learning has been done in pandemics, both past and present. So just to give a few examples, there's a school in San Francisco, a K-12 school called Brightworks, that's been holding its classes outdoors since October, I believe. The Marin School has classes in its school outdoors. There are a whole slew of schools in Maine and New England that are holding schools outdoors and plan to continue to do so throughout the winter, where the climate is quite a bit harsher than it is here in San Francisco. We're fortunate to have a very moderate climate. A lot of places in Europe are doing the same. To take a couple of past examples from past pandemics, for instance, New York City held school outside during the 1918 to 1919 influenza pandemic. And with various outbreaks of TB, many schools in the US and in Europe did the same. For instance, Providence, I believe, was the first place to do this early on in tuberculosis outbreaks, Providence, Rhode Island. Germany set up forest schools, that's what they called them. So certainly being outdoors will look different from being indoors, but when we look at what we're doing now, which is distance learning, that's a lot different too. And unfortunately, it has and comes with serious negative impacts for a lot of people, frankly, for most people, as far as we can tell. And worse, perhaps, it actually seems to hurt the most vulnerable and most disadvantaged people even more. So it has worse impacts on those groups. We can adapt and we can better serve our kids by holding school outside and having them learn outside. The science supports this. The science indicates that kids do best and benefit most from being in person at school. And the science also shows that being outdoors is the safest thing for all of us, for everyone, students, teachers, staff. In addition, the outdoors is free. This is a great thing about the great outdoors. There will be some cost to adapt to being outside, but it's a small fraction of what has been spent for distance learning. Just think of all the Chromebooks and so forth that have been purchased. And it's far, far less than the projected cost of a full indoor return. Just taking the costs of custodial staff, for instance, that the district has estimated is much higher, and there are many other things as well. Notably too, outdoor school can be super low cost. You can do this with, if you really needed to, I mean, you can cut up giant tarps and use those as seats on the ground if you wanted to go to sort of the lowest cost possible versions of this. It requires minimal equipment. You have no ventilation problems because you're outdoors in the air, and all the sanitization concerns and costs are not an issue when you're outdoors. There are a lot of good sources of information out there to help plan for one of these programs, and one of those is Green Schoolyards America, which has a COVID-19 outdoor learning initiative. That initiative has a lot of information about the science, also tools, and it includes advocacy tips. So you can go to this site in order to get a lot of background information to help you learn and figure out how to create a school outside program. I'm going to turn now to what we did at Jefferson specifically. We did a few key things to raise awareness there. We created a one-pager in order to explain what school outside is and what the benefits of holding school outside are. And we then circulated that to the community using like Google Groups or the PTA. We also, I think we're going to see this quickly. Do we have the one pager? Okay, I'll wait just a minute.
Trying to get it. Stand by 1 second.
Okay.
See that now, everybody? Great.
Okay. So here's an example of an educational piece that we produced, and we translated this into Chinese and Spanish as well to try to reach the largest number of people. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. This particular one pager, I'm not sure if we translated, but it is a good idea to do so. We did not translate this particular one pager, but it is a good idea to do so, and we recommend that you do so. We did translate other documents that we sent out. Okay. We also created a website, and we've used that website to do things like list resources for people and provide more information for them. So Jessa's just put that up, which is great. And you can see from that there are different things, different sections you can look at, including a link of research links. If you need information from a scientific perspective and other things to explain and support the positions that you're taking. In addition, we actually changed our name partway through our work. We started out with outdoor education, and then we realized that that was causing people to think about the wrong things. So we changed our name to School Outside so that it would be easier for people to get what we were doing and understand what we were doing. And we also realized that we needed to keep educating people, that we needed to keep building awareness of what School Outside is and what it means, and that it wasn't a one-shot deal. We couldn't just send out a one-pager and be done. We had to keep, talking to people and explaining things and showing them more information when they had questions. So the other thing to note is that you will probably need to build awareness not only at your school, but also at the legislative level. That might be with SFUSD, the city, or even now there are efforts going on statewide, for instance, if you're interested in participating in those. And I'm going to turn things over to Jessa now to talk about engaging with families.
Thanks, Supriya. One of the first things we did was talk to families. Understanding how people felt about return to school, second, returning to school in person indoors, and returning to school in person outdoors was really critical information. If this was not something that our community was interested in, understood, or was at all comfortable with, why put in the additional effort to create a plan? So one of the things that we did to get started with that is to create a survey. This survey, I'm going to show you just kind of a draft of what this is a survey template. We are able to share this if anybody's interested in using this survey tool at their school sites. We are able to share that out. If you guys are interested, we could do that after this is over. But here's what our parent survey looked like. It was pretty simple. We weren't looking for, we didn't want to offer a complicated survey. We wanted to make sure that this was something that we translated in the languages, primary languages spoken by families in our school. And we collected 266 responses. The questions were largely about kind of inside versus outside. And that was where we spent the bulk of our data gathering. And through that, we got some really interesting results that helped us move our planning forward. So again, this is just a quick 6-person survey, and we're happy to share that with everyone after this presentation's over. One of the next things, sorry, I'm catching up with myself here. We launched the educational piece first, the primer, just to help our community understand what we were talking about by School Outside. We launched the survey. we attended PTA meetings, and I know not all schools have active PTAs or any PTAs at all, but we figured out how to communicate with our community as our community best communicated, which in our case was through the PTA. And we were really lucky to have a couple teacher advocates who joined our group early on and helped us understand the teacher perspective. And this was really critical for us to understand kind of the willingness and readiness of teachers to consider teaching outside. And that factored into our plans as well. I think that's pretty much all I have for that. Supriya, do you want to move on to the next?
Sure. Okay, so we're going to turn now to some logistics and resources needed to do the learning outside. And Jess and I are going to split this one up, but I'll start with the basic resources. The first is a survey, which we've mentioned. You want to find out how interested your school population is in doing school outside. The second thing is to connect with the facilities department and Green Schoolyards team at SFUSD. They can tell you more about requirements for holding school, things that various regulations and rules that apply. And they can also help you obtain site maps of your school, which are super, super useful, because then you can visualize the space and figure out where people could actually be put. The third thing is to go ahead and actually get your numbers. You need to find out by asking your principal or other people at the school who would know the total number of students and teachers, and you want to know that by grade and by classroom. And then you can estimate the number that you think will return using, for instance, the survey data that you've gotten. You also want to identify the space that's available to you and the amount of space that you have. For most schools, this is going to be their schoolyards, but that's not the only place. You can see here that Jessa has put up for Jefferson a map of our school space. And there are, sort of dots marking where we considered putting people and where we're planning to have groups outdoors, assuming that this plan is allowed. So, you can actually physically see what the space is like, and you can physically get a sense of where different things are. Here's some other pictures, for instance, of spaces at Jefferson that can be used to do outdoor school outside there. And as I mentioned, schoolyards aren't the only place you could consider. You can consider nearby green spaces, such as the city parks, or perhaps there's a community partner who'd be interested in partnering up with your school that has green space you can use. You might even be able to request a slow street, that program that the city has been running, sort of calming traffic and having quieter areas around for, for public use. You could request that, or maybe even do something like a parklet outside your school if you wanted additional space. And you should also make sure you learn about infrastructure options. The school district does have some information about outside infrastructure options, and we have information about how to get that if you're interested in that. And then, of course, you can use Green Schoolyards America, which we had mentioned before, in order to learn, more about the resources you would have and what you would need to do this. And I'll turn it back over to Jessa for some additional things about doing workshops.
Yeah, one of the other key steps to making our plan a reality was holding a workshop, which consisted of about 30 participants. This is back when we could gather in at least small groups. We held this, I believe, in October, and it was a design charrette. It was a very thoughtfully designed workshop in which all the materials were prepped in advance. These schoolyard maps. We also had maps to adjacent green spaces. We had a working agenda for a 2-hour-long session that would result in concrete, feasible plans for use of Jefferson space and nearby green space for 3 different scenarios. One was a K-2 return. One was a K-3 return, I believe, and one was a K-5 return. And it was fascinating. One of the key aspects of it was that we met outdoors. We sat on mats on the ground in Golden Gate Park. There was traffic. It was noisy. We got the full experience. We walked our own walk. and held our entire workshop outside. There were moments where it was very hot and there were moments when it was cold. We got the whole to have that experience. So I can share a couple of things about that as well. We are very lucky to have some of our teachers participate. We also had the co-founder of Brightworks, which was the school Supriya mentioned earlier, that has been doing outdoor learning in Golden Gate Park and has gone through the health and safety plans and dozens and dozens at that point of conversations with the Department of Public Health to understand use of space and effective learning and teaching outdoors. That was really helpful too. And we also had the support of some USF graduate students who formed a group to create a case study about the project and the steps towards creating this plan. Of course, with any workshop, there's all the logistics that go into that. It was no small feat, but it was a really excellent way to form a plan with the greatest amount of input I think that we could have gotten during a pandemic. The plan itself is not done. It is still in draft form, and there are still several steps needed in order to complete the plan, including additional kind of listening sessions with groups that weren't as representative in creating the plan to make sure that it is sound. We certainly need input from our principal, who has been kind of, has been supportive of us continuing to explore this, but has not given specific feedback or participated in any other way as of yet. So that we need that buy-in in order to be able to move forward. And we also need to develop a health and safety plan as best as we can and start to think about costs. So there are lots of steps left to do, lots more input to gain. It is not a sure thing as of yet. We really look forward to sharing it when it is. But I say that because this is an iterative process. It is not a group of 5 to 10 parents that are going to create a feasible plan for an entire school. And we know that. We need the whole team to buy in, all the families to be interested in at least hearing the plan, and then being able to give feedback and welcome to give feedback, feel welcome to give feedback. So it is still in process, but we are getting there. I'll show you a couple of kind of segments from the workshop, and then I think we'll be close to done here, and we can turn it over to our other speakers. So we mentioned before some of the data. This was some of our survey data outcomes. You could see that the comfort level indoors responses were about 30% comfortable, 30% unsure. Comfort with outdoors skyrocketed up to about 71% and only 13% unsure. Those were the numbers that helped us decide what our likely return to school was. So as we were thinking about these spaces, we started to think about what the most likely return to school figures were, the number of cohorts we might have, and just so that we can start doing some concrete planning based on some figures. Here's an example of our school outside workshop meeting agenda, where we were, this is a very brief agenda, but just to give you an idea of what that breakdown looked like. And this is also something that we're happy to share if anybody's interested. And that is, I will wrap up.
Do we want to do the action items, Jessa?
Sure. You want to take that, Supriya?
Okay.
Can we maybe come back to that during Q&A maybe? Is that okay? Okay, great. Thank you, Jessa and Supriya. I'm sure we're gonna have a million questions for you guys. This is amazing. Every time I hear about what you're doing, yeah, I'm in awe. So we're gonna shift gears slightly and hear from Dea, who's with us. Her son is a middle schooler at Everett, and she's actually talked with Jefferson, and they've helped Dea and the moms that she's closely connected with, and she can tell us more. And it's a slightly different angle on outdoor learning. So Dea, why don't you take it away and tell us a little bit about what you have been up to and what you're planning?
Yes, thank you, Meredith, and thank you everyone that has joined to the conversation. Well, for us, it's a little bit different, the situation for the moms here in the Mission District. We have started conversations with Supriya, who is right now guiding us on the planning process. But basically, our experience is that before the pandemic, we were holding, or we were having a music workshops for the kids in the Mission District. These music workshops have the mission to promote the Spanish language and the Latin American culture. So when the pandemic hit, we had to close the program. But as soon as it was possible to start the music workshops outdoors, we did it, and we started during the summer. So basically, we have 5 families. It's a small cohort of kids and families that are getting together every week outside, outdoors, and we have this music workshop with the kids. Seeing what is happening and being so impacted by the pandemic and by the all social problems that we have, we needed to take the kids outside because we were concerned about the social and emotional problems and the long exposure to the screens. So we have been doing that. When we got connected with the parents and we started working with the distance, decrease the distance of collective parents, we were sharing all of this, and we were basically, sharing all the information and all the work that we are doing. So basically, that's how we got connected with Supriya and started working on the planning. Since we are already doing the work that we are doing outside, it's just a matter of including the help with the academic support for the kids. And right now, just basically this week, I have been in conversation with the teachers and with the principal at Everett School. I have a 6th grader at the Everett School, and I'm not working on this with the Everett School. I'm working with the moms in the mission, and we are from different schools. So for us, it's a little bit challenging, the situation, because we are not from one school. We have different schools. We are a group of moms. We have one of the moms in the group is a teacher, but is a teacher not from here, she's from Mexico. So we do have the resources that we can complement and we can help, we can use to support our kids. Just right now, what we need is the support and the guidance from the teacher, from the principal, and from other parents with other experiences like Priya and Jessa that already are more advanced in the planning. But I think we can do this, and we need to do this. Our kids are really suffering right now, especially the middle school kids that are not going to be invited back to the school in person. We need to create the resources for them. Right now, especially for the Latino community, the kids are getting bad grades. I have been working the whole week, as I'm telling you, trying to help my son with the distance learning and the homework online to be able to help with the grades. But I know many parents cannot do that because they don't have the language, they don't have the skills to know how to navigate the technology, and that's a problem. So we do have a crisis in the education, especially that impacting the Latino community. And that's the reason why we are here trying to create this resource for our families.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Dea. And Dea, can you maybe also add sort of how you workshopped with the moms and how you kind of went through the process that Jefferson, like you went to Dolores Park.
Oh yeah. What we did is Supriya helped us with what she was showing here, the planning process for the workshop. So we did have the first workshop last week, and we went to the space, and that was the advice from Supriya, that we, if we can, we should be in the place, to be experiencing being there. So we went to the Dolores Park because that's the park that is close to every family here in the Mission District. Based on the guidance that I had from Supriya, we needed to know, we went to see the location and what we are gonna need. So that's a central place for us. It has a bathroom that's close to the space where we can have the classroom. We have the playground that is also close to the place or the space that we can have the classes. There are tables that we can use if the kids are gonna be eating. And in regards of the questions about food, if we want to have food, since we are the moms and we are going to be working, basically this is going to be our responsibility, right? So we are already doing that. So we can just transfer that to the classroom and have the classroom outside and help the kids. For us, it's really important that the kids can be outside. They cannot keep going on with the distance learning because it's creating so much anxiety on them and so much depression. We need to have the kids outside. We have had already 9 months in this situation, and this is creating health issues, mental health issues for our kids and for the families. So we cannot keep doing the same thing because it's not working for our kids.
And then I think the other thing I think it would be interesting about, in terms of like you've talked with the principal and some of your son's teachers, how receptive have they been to what you've been planning? And
everything that I'm sharing right now is the work that we have been doing at the community base, right? Right now, what I'm doing is sharing with the teachers what we are doing, and especially requesting to be able to work in partnership with the teachers to be able to help my kid. Everything has been online, and since he's a middle school kid, he doesn't want to have the mom involved in his life. I mean, that's part of the healthy development. So I needed to wait until right now to be able to say, okay, look, I need to contact your teacher because we need to talk about how I can help you because your grades are not going well. So I need to send him an email. I need to contact the teacher, and we are going to have to discuss how we can help you. So that way for him is not that I'm being a mom that's, just intrusive in his life, right? Because that's how he is having his own space. So the teachers are very receptive of what I want, because I don't want him to be all the time in the computer. I want to decrease the time on the screen. I want to be part of the team that is helping him, teaching him on helping what he's learning or what he's not learning right now. So by that, I'm being able to see what's the problem, where can I help, and what resources I'm going to need to be able to help him. And that's the same need that other moms have, because we are suffering from this, and our kids are not doing well with the distance learning.
thanks for sharing, Dea. Yeah, it's been really fascinating especially as Dea and the moms in Dea's community have connected with Jefferson and getting help and figuring out the program that you're putting together. And I think I know that you're talking with the principal and the teachers about what can be considered I don't want to overshare what I know about your life. Yeah, I know, like the grading, your son getting grades that he's not used to getting, and getting a bad grade in phys ed when he's able to be outside and running and playing with his friends, and but then bad grade in phys ed because he doesn't want to be on Zoom in his house for phys ed is like, and
to me as a mom, it's very concerning because this kid is a kid, first of all, is a kid that likes to be moving, right? And he's a good student. He's a student that loves math, and he has an A in math. And he's bored with the math classes because he's not being challenged. But he's advanced in math, but he had an S in PE. So it didn't make any sense for me to have a kid that's having an F for physical education on Zoom. So like, I don't understand what is this, right? I mean, if it's not, I'm talking with the teacher and I'm trying to have help for him to be able to have more challenging homework for math, but having an F in physical education on Zoom, it was just like, this doesn't make any sense. That's fine to impact on him because he is feeling that he's failing. And just, by the F in PE, he's failing. He told me, he's feeling that he's the one that doesn't, as he said, I'm trash. So I could not let him just be thinking like that because it's just going to be worse for myself and for him to be able to help with the other academic that he needs, right? The academic progress that he needs to accomplish. But if he feels that he cannot do it and he is failing, so that's not going to help at all. So I really need to do this work, and I know the other moms are in the same situation. So it's the community that is suffering from this, and I have the resources, I have the skills, I can send an email to the teachers, to the principal, I can communicate because I can write, I can understand English, I do have an accent, of course, but I do understand. But what about the parents that can't? What about the parents that don't have the time, don't have the skills, don't know the system, they don't know how to navigate the system? So the kids are really suffering. They are getting very anxious and they are depressed. And with those two components, there's no learning. It's not happening. The brain under that kind of stress is not learning. So we really need to have this creative solutions for our kids. Otherwise, we are going to see more problems. We are not going anywhere with the distance learning, especially for the kids that are suffering and were not doing well even before the pandemic.
Thanks, Dea. I think we can move into some Q&A for Dea and for Jessa and Supriya if folks have questions for them specifically. It looks like one just popped up for Dea. And also Tina, I know that you've been keeping an eye on the questions, so maybe you've got a better head right now for where we're at with questions, and we also have the questions that came in advance. So I don't know if you have an idea of where we want to.
Well, we could jump in on just the logistics of the park and rec getting permits, or how to use the green spaces adjacent to your school. Those came up, as well as how you're figuring out what the primary language representation is in your groups to make sure that you're including different populations in your school. And there was another question about special day classes and representing families with kids with IEPs. So how about the permit issue, Supriya and Jessa? Have you explored that? I'm sure Everett's not quite there yet, but if you use Dolores Park, you'd have to coordinate with Park and Rec.
I can speak to what I know about when Brightworks was going through its process of trying to figure out how to use Golden Gate Park. They did have to work with Rec and Parks Permit and Reservations office, and they were able to secure space for a period of time. They were using a really large meadow space where I don't think there was any issues with exclusive use. And I think that is where it will get tricky if nearby green space is very small and there isn't a way to share it with the community. I think that's where there are questions. I don't have the answers to those questions and don't know what those situations are going to be like, but that is something I know that Rec and Park loves use of outdoor space, and I have no doubt they'll be an excellent partner of the school district when the time comes to start answering those questions. I know from the Botanical Gardens perspective, as kind of the nonprofit partner to the city, we have always loved hosting school groups and have watched our numbers of field trips drop to 0 and know that the Botanical Garden as a site could be a great source for schools to come and host classes on site, and are really interested in having those conversations, as I'm sure many other community organizations are also interested. So I think one next step is to figure out who those community partners are, and if that is another way in towards use of shared green space in the city.
We actually have a rep listening in from Rec and Park here tonight, so we'll be following up with her and see what she advises around that. So Maria, I'll be following up.
I just wanted to note one thing, which is that Dea is not working with a specific school because her moms are from a lot of schools and they're doing this sort of separately on their own time. So I'm not sure they would have the same sort of issues around permitting that a school like Brightworks would have if you're doing this as you want your whole school to be involved in this. I think those are probably two different situations and may, as a result, not require the same kind of formal process.
That's my understanding too.
Okay. We did move Emily into the spotlight, so I think that she's ready to answer questions about how after-school programs can offer outdoor learning.
Sorry, Tina. Thanks for joining us, Emily. So yeah, we had some questions come in advance about OST programming and how we could get after-school programs back in person if that's on the horizon, if they could be outdoors, because right now after school is more Zooms, which I think a lot of kids are zoomed out by after school. So how can we think about bringing kids outside in person through those OST programs? And I think Emily, who's joining us, and Emily, I believe her kids are at Francis Scott Key. And she may have a few things to share with us on that question that came in advance of tonight. So welcome, Emily.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's so impressive, all the work that you're doing, everyone who's spoken. Yes, so as a parent at Francis Scott Key, I have been very focused on out of school time. And similar to what happened at Jefferson, a friend of mine and I did a survey of our community as a starting place to see how many folks would be interested in, particularly we're first grade parents, we just started with the first grade of returning to small, stable group in-person out of school time programs as like a childcare support. And we're very surprised to see that 80% of our family base in first grade was interested in such a program. So we started to talk with the school about out of school time programs. And I think that there are sort of two issues with this. There's the fact, obviously, as we know from DEA and the botanical gardens and a lot of things, the out of school time programs are running in San Francisco right now. They are running as community hubs through the Department of Children, Youth, and Their Families. They are running as private learning camps. They are running as enrichment programs. So the question is how to connect the out of school time programs with the schools. And there are kind of two issues with this. There's the facility issue of, which is sort of what we're talking about tonight, of where do you put the out of school time program that normally runs on your school campus. And one of the really great options for that is outside. And then the other question is the funding issue. So many out of school time programs on campuses in San Francisco receive funding from the state of California for out of school time programs. And whereas some out of school time program funding has been allowed to support in-person programs, specifically the community hubs that have been happening, the state funds that flow through the school district have been blocked from being used for in-person instruction. And so what would be required to really sync up the out of school time programs and make them in their full capacity on school campuses would be a change to that rule. So the district has started to rethink their approach to this out of school time funding that they control for school sites, and have changed the rule now as of last week to be that the out of school time providers will be allowed to support schools that are going back to instruction, but only with this funding, but only at lunch and recess. This is going to significantly limit the amount of staff capacity that can help reopen schools outside, inside, anywhere. And it is something that the out of school time provider at Francis Scott Key and other out of school time providers I'm connected to that I know, this is maybe not everyone, but a number of them that I have spoken to who are funded to do out of school time programs at school campuses through this state funding stream, would like to see this rule changed as well, would like to see themselves be able to do more. And actually, these state out of school time funds that flow to specific campuses. So Francis Scott Key gets $305,000 a year, and Mira Loma gets $119,000 a year, and Sanchez gets $154,000 a year. It's a very set amount. And those funds are currently being used in San Rafael, where schools have reopened as a partnership between the out of school time provider, which is BACR, which is one of the providers on campus in a lot of San Francisco schools. They are allowed in San Rafael to use the ACES funding for things beyond recess and lunch. And so they've been able to put together a full day for kids by pairing the out of school time with the school time, because their district is allowing the use of these funds in a full capacity. This is my first grader. So I am, personally as a parent, really hoping that we can exert some advocacy and call for a rule change on this and the allowance so that we can use these out of school time funds to reopen with the small stable cohort model that we know has to happen. And we know that this is, it's just math. Like, we need all hands, all dollars on deck to do this. And to have one funding stream and group of people sort of arbitrarily, it seems to me, blocked from use just doesn't make sense. And particularly when there are outdoor spaces that can be used for this. Sorry, that was my video is on now.
Thank you.
Emily, thank you. And as folks know, decreasing the distance is not shy to get into advocacy. So, and outdoor learning has been on our radar for the months that we've existed, and we haven't done a lot focused on it yet. This is sort of our entry tonight into more of a focus on it, and I do really hope to see us getting parents more mobilized, and that's the OST. It just makes so much sense. So I hope we can do more around that. Thank you for sharing that information with us tonight. Thanks, Emily. Thanks.
So we had a couple of other questions. I don't know that we'll have the answers. What about using the Everett parking lot and/or Mission High School soccer field? I don't know that Dea can respond to that because again, she's working with a number of schools in the mission, but what do we know about using parking lots and fields that are through the district? And then what's the liability if you're going to off-property places?
Okay, I'm not, as I told you, I'm not working with the school, with the Everett School on this planning. The program and the work that we are doing is on the Mission District. So that's why we are working with moms from other schools, different schools, but it's basically the Latino moms in the Mission District. When you think about the Everett School, that's the first thing that it comes to your mind, parking lot, because it's huge and you can use it, right? So that's the question, why that's not being considered? Why we don't have that conversation? And we just don't. At the school, the parents are not having this conversation. Right now, what's happening is that I am telling them, based on my own experience, what's happening with our students at the school, and that we need to start thinking about something different. And the outdoor learning is one of the options, and we need to have that conversation.
Thank you, Dea. Go ahead, Jessa.
I think one interesting thing that I've seen just start to come up is, and certainly in the middle and high school conversation, is that, so if you go to the CDC website and you're in the San Francisco Department of Public Health CDC website, and you look at the school dashboard and where you can see all the different schools that have requested or put in their applications and permits to reopen, there is now a long list, or I thought surprisingly long list, of private high schools that are now have approval to open for outdoor learning only. So there are models that are starting to be created and put in action by these private schools that hopefully are starting to work out some of these questions. They're the ones who are coming up with these first round health and safety plans and are testing some of these concepts. And I hope that I think that there's a real possibility all of that learning could support a return for middle school and high school SFUSD students outside.
Maria just made a comment. Meredith, can you see that in chat about from Park and Rec if you want to share it?
Yeah, and yeah, so I'm assuming it's okay to share with folks, but yeah, and Maria from Parks and Rec, who's here with us, has commented that that they do support outdoor learning in parks, and she's happy to help schools work with the permitting department. So if folks, I'll share out, we have several things to share out with folks following this conversation. And that is one thing, if I'll double check with Maria, that's okay, but she's put her email here for us. So we can share that with folks if schools or individual small parent communities want to reach out to her about that, you can do so.
Great. Well, we are right at 8 o'clock. We did have some advanced questions, and one that I think is probably on everyone's mind is the labor issue of, are teachers going to be teaching in this outside classroom, or are we looking at other providers doing that, and how are folks bridging that conversation, because it is pretty complicated.
I can just start with quickly sharing. I attended the second district PTA conversation last night with a few teachers, and Susan Solomon from UESF. And they can't share everything that's going on in the bargaining conversations, but Susan Solomon did mention that outdoor learning has come up, and I don't know to what degree it's being considered right now in terms of like full day teaching outside, no accessing your classroom, but it sounds like it's on their minds. And so that was good to hear. And I don't know anything more than that, but that was interesting to hear her say that last night. And then like with Daya's group, right? So that's completely complementary, scaffolding of what's happening during the day with the Zooms that their kids are attending, and sort of taking the kids outside and the moms being the teachers beyond that. So that's a little bit different. I think Jefferson, maybe you guys can answer on the teacher front, how that complicates things.
Well, I think, yeah, it's going to be all dependent on what the MOU looks like, of course. And, in some of the earlier thinking around potential models for school outside, there were earlier conversations about kind of opt-in opportunities for teachers who did feel more comfortable teaching outside than indoors. And I'm really interested in seeing more information about that and hearing more from teachers. We know a little bit about what our teachers at our school think, but there's so many more conversations that need to be had, and so much is going to ride on what comes out of the MOU, of course. But I think that one of the action items that I would really encourage everyone to think about is, who are all your stakeholders in your community, and what do they feel, how do they feel about this? And trying to start these conversations about interest level, understand who wants to do outside, whether they're a teacher or their parents, or getting to know that information first is a really good step.
Thanks, Jessa. Okay, I'm just gonna comment on that. And I know Carrie, who just commented in the chat, is a teacher and is also very interested in setting up outdoor school. So it sounds like that's not the main discussion or a side discussion, but yeah, okay. She says if we want this on the MOU to get loud with Susan. So folks who are here, that's an interesting parting message. If you do want to see teachers involved with the outdoor school creative solutions, then maybe do some advocacy around that, which I think DTD may be willing to get into in the new year. So I guess with that, we're over now. Thank you everyone for being here tonight for this conversation. It's incredible to hear these ground up solutions from parents and to share with other parents and to share all of the amazing things that you're doing with other parents and other schools, so that we can all benefit. So thank you, everyone. We have some follow-up we'll do, share out a slides request. We'll send out Maria's info from Rec and Parks. There are some questions we didn't get to answer that maybe we can try to answer in the follow-up. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight.
Thank you. Have a good night.